Traffic control is essential for survival in a world now built on wheels. Without it, there would be chaos. Every traffic movement is controlled with skill and discipline. The 10th Commonwealth Games and Royal Tour combined saw Ministry of Transport swing into action on a military exercise basis. The largest and most ambitious traffic plan ever devised in New Zealand, and one perhaps that won't be paralleled or surpassed in this century. It took 15 months of detailed planning, collaboration with Ministry of Works, the Canterbury Automobile Association, and the formation of a traffic committee directly responsible to the Games Organising Committee to make this plan a feasible proposition. It was on Monday, the 21st of January, that the theory began to spring into practice, with the beginnings of the arrival of the troops, so to speak. It had been decided much earlier in planning that it would be more economical to keep local staff on mobile duties and import into Christchurch 75 traffic officers from other centres. This would also put to the best use the local knowledge of the local staff. So, from all over New Zealand, 2 and 3 days before the Games were to begin, traffic officers incognito in civils began to board normal NAC flights to descend upon Christchurch. The daylight crossing of the inter-island ferry Rangatira brought into Littleton extra patrol cars from Wellington. 3 months earlier, there had been an influx of traffic officers on a special traffic safety campaign. And as they drove off one by one, it looked like the beginnings of the traffic blitz all over again. The whole traffic plan involved the need for only 14 extra cars to be brought in. These were not to be used as patrol cars, but as pool cars, transporting officers on duty to their points in the morning and back again in the evening. In fact, their first job the very next morning was to pick up the officers who were arriving at the airport and deliver them to their base for the next 12 days. HMNZS Pegasus had been made available to Ministry of Transport by Ministry of Defence. This was to be home for the 75 visiting traffic staff. This part of the exercise was planned simply as a 12-day annual Army territorial camp, together with the servicing of officers in the field. It was with military overtones that each officer was allotted his sleeping space. When it was found that bed was a stretcher and a rather suspect K-pop mattress, there were not a few disgruntled superlatives. Pegasus was a land-based ship, not designed with sleeping quarters in mind. However, the Games Organising Committee promptly supplied new beds and inner-strung mattresses, and it wasn't long before they were lining the walls, and a noticeable air of contentment soon settled around the ship. And on this naval base, it was the Army that supplied the cooks to keep everybody well fed. But the serious business of traffic control takes priority, commencing with an all-day briefing headed by the Chief Superintendent of Traffic, Mr. D.F. Ross.
Welcome to Christchurch and the Games. I see many faces here today that I've known over a number of years. I see many faces too that were here during the traffic blitz in Christchurch back in October. I want to say only one thing, deal perhaps only with one aspect of this exercise. It's a very big exercise, one of the biggest that we've ever done. Superimposed on it is the Royal Tour. Understand this quite clearly, that the success or failure of this whole exercise depends on you.
Then it was down to the nitty-gritty with Chief Traffic Officer Fox.
Simply because the routes were mixed up with the general public. And the inevitable happened when the routes jammed, the competitors were mixed up with the public, and that was it. So right, our planning was based on the fact that the competitors receive #1 priority, and they still do this. I'll tell you how to distinguish these two.
Familiarisation with the territory was deemed necessary. Some of these traffic officers had never been in Christchurch in their lives before, so it was imperative that they see for themselves the actual routes and the 330 separate control points they would be manning at different times. A week previously, there had been a successful rehearsal of the traffic plan at the QE2 Park opening, under the control of Christchurch officers. So these men knew that they had inherited a big responsibility in having to step into the breach for actual performance. A sight perhaps never to be seen again is that of 75 or so traffic officers en masse. At a different locale, they perhaps frightened even a teetotaler into handing over his car keys. Here, in the vastness of the QE2 Park car parking area, they don't seem quite so overwhelming as they listen to Chief Fox explaining their duties in guiding the cars into it. Ministry of Transport's responsibility ended at the gates of QE2 Park, so a visit to the stadium for all visiting officers was arranged. It was a good morale booster and a complete surprise. All had thought that a view of the outside of the stadium would have been all that they would ever see during their time on duty. Even empty of crowds, it looked mighty impressive. Opening day brought with it cold winds and rain. Not very good prospects for the afternoon game's official opening ceremony, and indeed even worse for the pointsmen. The biggest plans of operation were laid down for opening and closing days, and as the duty pointsmen were driven to their positions, the weather prospects were not helping the tension. The conditions, however, didn't deter potential game spectators as they drove onto every major route bumper to bumper. The traffic plan was now fully operational and being tested to the limit. Thankfully, the morning started to clear, and although the wind was still thin, the sun began to warm the body and soul. Prospects to everyone seemed brighter, for this was the day that had been planned for since September 1972. The pulse of all operations was the Christchurch Ministry of Transport's communications room. It collated and dealt with all information from all units throughout the area. These included not only patrol cars, but motorbike patrols, chief traffic officers on foot operating mobile walkie-talkies, and for the first time ever in traffic control, a Ministry of Transport Cessna flying at 1,500 feet above the city. All of these to do with the game's traffic control, as well as the normal day-to-day routine city patrols. The pace was a little hectic at times.
On the conditions of QE2, please. Ascot Avenue entrances and the VIP entrance are reasonably clear. Do you want any assistance from Bear Avenue, over?
Board, traffic is flowing very quietly here. It's 3 lanes towards the park. We have room for another 2,000 cars here, and the traffic officers here are coping very, very well, over.
Roger, Ford. Many thanks. What's the matter? Welcome to Fox. I've had a request from Watson, the latest air report in relation to traffic density and flowing at Wainoni Road, Bear Avenue, please.
Fox to McLaughlin, yes, flying at 1,500 feet over Queen Elizabeth Park. I'll do a steep turn to the right and coming into view now. Traffic is banked right back on Wainoni Road, right back onto Woodham Road, and back to Linwood Avenue. The traffic officer on that point will have to give priority to the Wainoni Road traffic. All traffic on New Brighton Road is to be stopped. It is very light on this road at this time, over.
Roger, McGrath to Fox, thank you. I'll call Watson now and pass that information on. McGrath to Watson, latest report from air control. Very congested on Wainoni Road, back to Woodham Road. Would you contact the pointsman on Bear Avenue, Wainoni Road, please, and ask him to give particular attention to Wainoni Road traffic turning right into New Brighton Road, over.
You were giving attention to putting those vehicles into 3 lanes on Bower Avenue as we planned.
Yes, this is being done. It would appear though this points from the Bower Avenue and New Brighton Road is perhaps giving a little too much attention to New Brighton Road traffic as against Wainoni Road.
Well, it's important that we do this because if we don't get those lanes on Bower Avenue, we'll have a build back and we will not be able to get the Royal Party through 2 minutes at a time.
Chief traffic officers patrolling the area stepped in to assist when it was decided to divide it into 2 one-way lanes to help clear the blockage. Once 2 lanes had been established, it didn't take long to clear, with minutes to spare before the Royal Party arrived on their way to QE2 Park for the official opening by Prince Philip. There were more than 30,000 people at the opening ceremony. No one was late. Everyone had arrived safely. Rows and rows of parked cars and military assembly were perhaps mute testimony to the success of the traffic plan. To the duty pointsmen, it had been about 5 or 6 hours of hard, ceaseless activity. Now, suddenly, the streets were quiet and almost deserted. Although they weren't allowed to leave their point for sometimes up to 12 hours, they were at least able to relax before the onslaught in reverse. 30,000 people returning home by car, taxi, bus, bike or Shanks's pony. It gave Christchurch a chance to relax also. Apart from being a little quieter, the city was able to return to its normal self. At Pegasus, however, the duty transport officer and his staff had something entirely different to organise. You can't just dump a man out on a point and forget him. You have to feed him. In fact, he had to feed all 75 of them. While the prepared food is being loaded into a couple of vans, the MOT commandant briefs 2 of the local boys on the routes that they will follow on their errand of mercy. In some cases, pointsmen were not able to leave their points and would therefore need to be relieved for a couple of minutes while they had a bite to eat and drink. But in most cases, they were able to gather round and relax. Three or 4 minutes, though, was the maximum the wagon could stay at one point. There was a lot of territory to cover, and they had to keep moving. Of course, some officers were luckier than others.
Oh, please, thanks. As soon as the traffic clears, I'll be over. Thank you.
The people of Christchurch created a terrific impression with their generosity and kindness towards all visiting officers. There was one of many similar stories abounding of one couple who brought out a TV onto their front lawn, erected deck chairs, and invited the officers close at hand to put their feet up and relax. This goodwill between Ministry of Transport and the public is something that the Ministry is justly proud of. For 9 more days, the Games continued. And for those days, each one was the same. Get the crowds to their venues in the morning, get them home again at night. But apart from this, there were the outside road venues to control. The 20-mile road walk was the first of these. It required 76 separate pointsmen. Here, as in all outside venues, they were assisted by Games officials. Duty time along the route was from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. All had to be transported to their duty points along the route, many from their normal traffic control points around the city. And when the race was finished, they had to be taken back to them quickly in order to help control the homeward traffic. It was an exercise in efficiency and precise planning. Next came the marathon. It required 86 separate pointsmen, both ministry and civilian, more than any other route. As in the walk, officers had to be taken to and fro. On both of these routes, traffic control was the same, 5 minutes before the athletes were due. Cross-traffic was allowed across between times, and cars were allowed behind, providing the athletes were clear at intersections. Then came the morning of the final day and the road cycle race around the Kashmir Hills. This required 64 pointsmen. But of all outside venues, it required the most rigid control plan. All houses and streets were sealed off. People were not allowed out of their front gates. On the downhill run, cyclists would be reaching speeds of 70 kilometers per hour. If somebody stepped into their path, the result could prove disastrous. The run was a grueling exercise for the cyclists, but for the ministry, it went perfectly. The last day of the Games saw a closing ceremony unparalleled for sheer exuberance and goodwill. It was sad that the people who had worked so hard and devotedly to get everyone to and from this place could not be inside for the final ceremony. It would have been a just reward for a job well done. Superintendent Goldsmith and all traffic officers had now finished their job. All that remained was to get the traffic home again for the last time. But the Royal Tour had not finished. It still had to go on. It still had to be planned and organised. A train that was able to stop at the main street on this occasion brought people to Oamaru. This was indicative of the diverse type of control needed at different places throughout New Zealand. Each local plan, which had to conform to a national plan, was the responsibility of the chief officer in the area it was to be executed in. Here, because royalty walked everywhere, crowd control was the responsibility of the police. It was the vehicle movements that the ministry controlled. Masterton was different again. Apart from traffic control in Masterton itself, there was country traffic control. A traffic officer had to travel many miles on dusty gravel roads to control an intersection that a few tractors and cars use now and again. This may have seemed rather unnecessary, but it was part of a very rigid plan that allows no room for risks of any sort. Even while Princess Anne and Captain Phillips, having got to their destination safely, admire the horses at the Te Parai stud, another traffic control plan is waiting to swing into action. Everywhere it's the same. To get royalty from A to B safely and on time is by and large the entire responsibility of Ministry of Transport. The ministry's jurisdiction on this tour didn't stop on terra firma. It also had to fly the royal party, where they were flying with the way to travel, as well as controlling the special air routes that they flew on.
The Royal One, this is Radio Tower. If you're still listening to frequency, I have the Motorway with
Royal One, Roger, going
So 320, 25 knots, adjusting 30. 2/8 of Stratus at 800, 5/8 at 1500, visibility
1.5 reducing to 5,000 metres. Tower. The Motorway QH is 1005, QH.
And wherever royalty landed, there were the inevitable crowds who had more than likely arrived by road. creating extra traffic numbers and movement, all of which had to be preconceived and towards the final days of the tour, the Auckland Motorway Division is briefed on the part they will play in controlling traffic on the 20-mile stretch of southern motorway that the Royal Entourage will travel on when driving from Hamilton to Auckland City. Motorway traffic control has its own kind of problems. The Royal Party was going to be travelling at peak traffic hours on a Friday afternoon. It would add to these problems.
On the roads and streets of New Zealand. The least possible route opinions to all other traffic using the roads during the passage of the Royal Motorcades.
Every entrance and exit ramp would have to be manned, as it was decided not to close the motorway, but leave it open to all traffic, but kept under tight control. But, as the best laid plans of mice and men, in this case, the car which travels directly in front of the convoy, the lead car, started having alternator trouble about 8 kilometres along the motorway. Realizing that it wouldn't make Auckland, a call was put out to the scout car, which travels 2 minutes ahead of the lead car, to drop back and replace it.
We're having mechanical trouble. We'll have to call in. Would you stop at your present location for that?
The call was also made to the police car, the second car in the entourage.
Pilot's lead. I understand. I'll slow down to enable the changeover to take place. Over.
A successful changeover from the lead to scout car was made without anything untoward being noticed by royalty. But this was where the problem began to compound itself. There was now no scout car to serve as a warning to pointsmen that the royal entourage were 2 minutes behind. It was intended that the royal party should go off the Simon Street exit near the very end of the motorway. All traffic would be diverted off the Khyber Pass exit immediately before. As the time drew near for the royal entourage to arrive and no scout car appeared, it was decided to start diverting the traffic and clearing the motorway from Khyber Pass to Simon Street. Thousands of cars stream off the motorway at this time, and the task was proving nearly impossible. It was thought, however, that when the scout car arrived, there would be 2 minutes in hand to release one lane of traffic up the motorway ahead of the entourage. It was quite a shock when it was realized that what was thought to be the scout car was in fact the lead car, with royalty caught in a bottleneck behind. But in spite of this, the convoy never came to a stop, and royalty were completely unaware that the traffic officers up front were developing ulcers. As a whole entity, the entire traffic control plan worked, and worked well with a minimum of fuss and inconvenience to the public. But perhaps a summation of Ministry of Transport's achievements can be left to the chairman of the Commonwealth Games Organising Committee, Sir Ronald Scott.
The traffic control system for the Games was extremely well planned. It was also carried out with great efficiency and with a great deal of understanding by the traffic people who were on duty during the period of the Games. Having seen something of traffic control, or the lack of it, at the previous Olympic and Commonwealth Games, there's no doubt in my mind that the system which was deployed by the Transport Department here in Christchurch was the best by far.
This was the biggest traffic control exercise that the Ministry of Transport has so far undertaken. It was successful. and its success must be attributed to the cooperation of the public and to the professional ability of all the traffic staff involved.